Over the last 13 years, I've done a lot right and I've done a lot wrong in my muscle building journey. That's why in this video, I'm going to share with you the 5 key takeaways that I wish I knew when I first started in the gym. So the first big takeaway I want to share with you is that chronic stress will ruin your progress in your muscle building journey. So what exactly is chronic stress and why is it so bad for progress? Well, to understand this, first we need to discuss stress itself and more importantly, the stress hormone cortisol. So cortisol is a catabolic hormone, which may seem bad since it's the opposite of anabolic. But cortisol in its acute form has many positive roles in the body. It's when cortisol is chronically elevated that it becomes a problem, meaning you're always experiencing elevated levels of cortisol. Now there was a chapter of my life in my early 20s where I experienced chronically elevated cortisol, and I can tell you, not only did it kind of ruin my life, it also ruined my muscle building progress and my fitness journey as a whole. During that chapter of time, I really didn't make any progress. So during that time, I was working shift work. So I was swapping from days to nights. I was working most of the time 60 plus hours a week. There were some times where I'd go on stretches of 84-hour weeks for weeks in a row. I was working at a chemical plant and the chemical plant was having some issues. We made ammonia and the plant was rather new. So it'd start up, it would shut down, start up and shut down. It was incredibly frustrating. And I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. And I was training with a monster bodybuilder. Realistically, I had no business training with this guy in regards to the intensity and volume that this guy was working at. He was 260 pounds in the off season, and I was training as a natural athlete, trying to go tit for tat with this guy. Obviously, in weight, he was stronger than me, but the intensity and the volume, I was trying to keep up with him, and I was keeping up with him. We were training our asses off. And looking back, it was cool. I'm not gonna lie, it was cool to push myself to that point. But the problem arises when I wasn't sleeping at all, right? So the sleep within itself is a huge problem that's gonna raise cortisol. But then you put severe overtraining on top of it, where, I mean, guys, I was so overtrained that there were times where I would literally fall asleep standing at work. Every year at work, I was able to get my blood work done. Right around that time, it was actually really in the middle of it before I realized what was happening and how severe the overtraining and undersleeping was. Still wasn't aware of all the things I'm telling you right now. And I went to the doctor and got my blood work, and he's like, your resting blood sugar is incredibly high. What is your diet like? And I started to explain to him what my diet's like. He's just like, there's no reason your blood sugar to be this high. Does anybody in your family have diabetes? He started asking me all these questions, and I started to get concerned. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Why is my resting blood sugar so high when I eat a relatively healthy diet? I was pushing the calories a little bit at the time, and we're going to talk about that here shortly. But it was no reason for my blood sugar to be that high resting and fasted. And so I was concerned, and I started to do a little research, and part of what I came to is, elevated cortisol chronically can lead to elevated high blood sugar. And not only did it ruin my life in regards to my blood sugar was all out of whack, I wasn't sleeping, I was falling asleep at the gym, I'd fall asleep in the gym parking lot, right? I literally would be waiting for my training partner. I'd get there about 20 minutes before him, and I would drink my pre-workout in the car and then just fall asleep. That's how bad it was. So not only did it ruin the quality of my life, it also got to the point where no matter how hard I trained, no matter how hard I pushed myself, I was getting stronger relatively, but my physique was just looking worse and worse and worse. And I wasn't building any muscle, even though the weights technically were going up and I was pushing myself really hard. I made essentially no progress during that time. In fact, I think I went backwards. I can try to pinpoint some old photos. I wish I did a better job of documenting my journey at that time because I really don't have a lot of photos during that time. But it was a terrible mess, and it wasn't until I finally let my ego stop making the decisions and I stopped training with that guy and took a huge rest from intense training and really away from the gym for a little while that everything started to balance back out. And then what do you know it, 8 to 12 weeks later, my physique looks way better, my face looked way better, and I just looked healthier, and everything was just starting to click again. And going through that process made me realize, like, oh shit, chronic stress will ruin not only your muscle building progress, but ruin your health and ruin really your entire life as a whole. Because it was a dark time, just physiologically and mentally and emotionally. It wasn't like anything was wrong in my life other than the fact that my body was just wrecked. Now, that was a big tangent in cortisol, and honestly, I could have kept going on it because it's one of the most misunderstood hormones, and its effects on the body are very much misunderstood by the masses. And I wish when I was 21 and going through all of that, somebody would have given me that information so I understood why I felt like shit and why I wasn't making progress. So with all that said, let's move on to big takeaway number 2 from my 13 years in my lifting journey. So your training needs structure and progression. You can't just go to the gym and wing every single workout year after year and expect to see progress in your muscle building journey. In the first few years, of course, if you're pushing yourself in the gym, you can just wing your workouts and you're going to make some serious progress. But eventually, it's going to come to the point where you're no longer able to give the muscle the proper stimulus it needs to force an adaptation and make it grow back bigger. And this is the point where you need to start following a training program. And if you aren't to that point yet, it's going to be more beneficial and you're going to make more progress by simply starting to follow a training program now. The reason following a structured training program is so powerful and beneficial to muscle building is that you can make intentional progress in your training by increasing the weights that you're lifting for a specific exercise in a specific rep range. You can also strategically increase your volume over time. By doing this, you're going to be able to consistently provide your muscles with an adequate stimulus to build new muscle tissue over time. For me personally, I didn't start following actual structured training programs until I was about 20 years old. From 13 to 18, I really was doing football style workouts, so they weren't really based around building muscle, they were based around strength, power, and explosiveness. Then when I started hitting the gym on my own and doing bodybuilding style workouts, it's kind of just winging it for a few years, and I made pretty good progress because I was relatively new to hypertrophy style training. But eventually I hit a plateau, started Googling, different workout programs and things like that. And that's when I started following training programs. And that's when I really started to kind of explode in the muscle building department because I had never tracked my weights. I had never strategically increased weights. I would always just kind of train off of feel. And I do still train off of feel, even within a training program. You have to be aware with yourself. You have to be in tune with your body. But you also need to know if you're progressing week by week and month by month. This is a great indicator and a great way to provide that new stimulus for the muscle. So if you want free access to 9 different hypertrophy training programs, you can click the link down below in the description and join our free community. As a member of the community, you're going to get access to 9 different hypertrophy training programs completely for free. We have an entire nutrition course in there that's going to teach you everything you need to know about dieting to build muscle and completely transform your physique. So go ahead and click that link down below in the description. Right now, we're at 104 members in the community, and my goal is to get that number as high as possible. It's completely for free. The programs are dope. So click the link down below and join the free community. Now, the third big takeaway that I want to share with you guys is that intensity is essential to build muscle. It doesn't matter how good your training program is or how good your form is. If you aren't training hard enough and pushing yourself close to failure, you simply won't build muscle. I've coached hundreds of people and I've been to gyms all across the country, and very few people I see in the gym and with new clients actually push themselves close to failure within a hypertrophy style that's actually going to help them build muscle. Now, for me personally, this isn't one of the lessons that I had to learn myself, as if anything, I really overtrained in the beginning for a long time. The first time I stepped into the gym was for football PE. It was right after 8th grade in the summer. I was going to be a freshman in high school and we had weightlifting for football. And I fell in love the very first day. I immediately noticed that when coach wasn't looking or he wasn't paying attention, people were cutting shit short. People were doing half reps. People were stopping their sets way earlier than they were supposed to. And for me, I just wanted to push myself and see how hard I could go. I didn't care if coach was watching. I didn't care if anyone was watching. To me, it was a fun challenge to see how many reps I could do with a certain weight or see how many crunches I could do in a specific amount of time. So I never had to learn this intensity of training personally in my fitness journey, but the reason I'm sharing it with you guys is because I've seen it in so many different training partners that I've had to teach to push themselves very close to failure. Through all of the clients that I've coached, most of them, I'd say 95% of them, don't start off our program with the proper training intensity. Over time, we teach them how to get there, but very rarely do I see training footage from somebody in the very beginning of a program and they immediately are just pushing themselves super close to failure, right? And of course, in all of the gyms, I've been to gyms all across the country, and rarely do I see someone in the gym and I'm like, damn, that dude's pushing himself. Normally it's like, oh, why'd that guy cut the set short? Like, he had so many reps left in the tank. That's normally what I see, and I feel like the masses and most of the people out there who are in the gyms simply aren't pushing themselves hard enough. So as a general rule of thumb, just leave no more than 2 reps left in the tank on any given set. And if you don't know what that feels like, well, the first thing you have to do is train to absolute failure. Pick a machine like a hack squat or any machine that you feel safe in, even like a chest press machine, right? And push until you can no longer push anymore. I'm talking about until you cannot even get a quarter rep. Or in a hack squat, go down until you cannot get off of the platform, until you're bottomed out and you can't move it up. That's true failure. Same thing with a chest press. Go until you can't even push it up at all. That's absolute failure. And once you've experienced that, then you'll know what 2 reps shy of that actually feels like. And that's where your sweet spot should be. From 2 reps all the way to failure is a great spot to be in to build muscle tissue. Now, the 4th big takeaway that I want to share with y'all might actually seem a little counterintuitive to number 3 and what we just talked about with intensity, but they're actually intertwined. So number 4 is that you can't train if you're injured. So right after the chapter of my lifting journey that I just shared with y'all earlier, when I was overtraining and training with that monster of a bodybuilder, I actually ended up injuring myself and straining my lat where I couldn't lift for about 3 months. And during that time, I had to stay fit and stay sharp mentally, so I picked up running. I actually did a marathon, which was really cool, and it got me into more of a overall hybrid style of training, which I still do now with martial arts, cycling, and lifting. But I was injured, and it sucked, and I couldn't lift, and I couldn't build muscle. And I think when you're young, especially if you're watching this and you're in your 30s, 40s, you're probably more aware of this, but you're not invincible. You're not invincible. And you need to push yourself in the gym and you need to train hard, but you also need to take the necessary precautions to make sure that you aren't getting injured when you're training in the gym. And so you need to make sure that you're warming up very seriously. You should take your warm up just as seriously as you take your actual training. You shouldn't just go into the gym, warm up for 2 or 3 minutes, and then go into your working sets. You should have a routine that you do to warm up and prime your body for peak performance and injury prevention. You should also make sure that you always show up to the gym very hydrated, and you should hydrate throughout your training. If you're showing up dehydrated and you aren't hydrating during your training, you're putting your body and your joints and your ligaments at a much higher risk of injury. And in your workouts, you should focus on controlling and even exaggerating the eccentric portion of the reps so you don't have to lift quite as much weight to get the same stimulus. So for example, let's say you're doing a bench press and you're aiming for a set of 6 to 8 reps, and you pick 225 pounds and you just drop the weight down to your chest and then you press up, right? You have no control on the eccentric and it's coming down in less than half a second, right? You could get the exact same stimulus and arguably even more stimulus if you were to drop down to 215, 210 and control the eccentric for 1,000, 2 1,000 and then explode up. You're not robbing yourself of muscle building progress by doing this, but what you are doing is sparing your body a little bit of that load. And as time goes and you continue to increase in your lifting journey, you're going to get to the point where you're lifting some heavy weights. And it sounds cool, it's really awesome, but when you look at it from an injury prevention and a longevity perspective, which is a key part of this, you guys see the transformation in the thumbnail, right? I went from 14 to 27. It took me a very long time to get the amount of muscle that I have now. So you have to think about longevity in this. For longevity and just for the overall quality of your workouts, having that eccentric control with a little less weight is going to be very powerful. And realize too, it's cooler. It's like when I'm in the gym and I see somebody controlling the eccentrics and using a weight that's actually appropriate for them, and I can tell that they're just working the shit out of the muscle, they're not just lifting the weight, I'm like, oh, that dude knows what he's doing. And guess what? Every time I see someone doing that, they're jacked. Every single time, they're jacked. They have a lot of muscle, more muscle than most people that I see in the gym. And it's because they're controlling that eccentric and they understand it's not just about how much weight you lift, it's also about how you lift it. And finally, key takeaway number 5 is that dirty bulking is a terrible idea. Most of my earlier years in my lifting journey were spent either extremely bulking or extremely cutting. There was no in between. I was either really low on calories and trying to get as shredded as possible, or I was eating the most amount of food that I could possibly handle in a day, trying to build as much muscle as possible. And what I didn't realize is all the negatives that come along with that, and just the fact that it's unnecessary. So the biggest negative from a purely aesthetic and physique development progress standpoint is that you're going to put on unnecessary body fat. Your physique isn't going to look as good. And then when you go to cut down and really show off all the muscle that you've put on, it's going to take a lot of work because you put on more body fat than you needed to. So what you want to do instead is you actually want to be in a very small calorie surplus of about 300 calories. That's all that you're actually going to need to maximize your recovery and to get the most out of your training. If you start to stack pounds on really quick and you see the scale going up really quick, I promise it's not muscle. There's no way it's muscle. Muscle building takes a long time. It's a very strenuous process on the body. If it was very easy to get jacked and build muscle, everybody would do it. It's easier for some than others, of course, but if you see that scale going up 2-3 pounds a week consistently, I promise that's not 2 to 3 pounds of muscle. So I recommend aiming for about half a pound of overall weight gain on average per week when you're in that muscle building phase. I think that's the best sweet spot where you're going to get the most out of your training. You're going to recover the best by being in that small surplus, but you're not going to put on unnecessary body fat. When you're in that surplus, you are going to put on body fat over time, but it isn't going to be an unnecessary amount. And if you're like, well, Drew, that sounds great, but I don't really know how to get into that 300 calorie surplus. I don't even know what my maintenance calories are right now. Well, you can click the link down below and join the free community that I talked about earlier. In the community, there's a specific course and a specific lesson about muscle building that's going to teach you exactly how to figure out what that 300 calorie surplus is for you and how to break those calories down into the proper macronutrients to make sure that you're making the absolute most out of your muscle building progress. So if that's something you're interested in, click the link below, join the community, and check out the muscle building section phase of the course. So that's pretty much going to wrap up this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content, and drop a comment down below. Let me know what you thought of the video. Let me know any future video ideas you'd like to see. And also, if you're interested in one-on-one coaching and taking your physique journey to the next level with a custom nutrition plan and a custom training plan, as well as accountability and support to make sure that you're executing on the plan and have everything that you need to succeed, then click the link down below for the one-on-one coaching. You can fill out the quick application and book a time to speak with me, where we'll talk about your fitness journey. We'll talk about what you've got going on right now, what you're looking to achieve, to make sure that we'd be a good fit to help you achieve those goals. So if that's you, click the link down below, fill out the quick application, and pick a time that works for you. And to everyone else, until the next video, keep pushing, keep persevering, and keep it positive.